Good afternoon, everyone. Not enough coffee yet? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am from kind of the South, and so that's how we do things. So thank you, David, for that introduction, and thank you for giving part of my remarks. Um, I am real pleased to be here this afternoon for this really, really important discussion. It's extremely timely because, as David mentioned, it's something that we've been talking about a long time, and the fact that we're the least diverse profession, that 88% of all lawyers are white. And, and he talked about surgeons being more diverse than we are, but what startles me the most is that architects are more diverse than we are. And so, that is just, to me, just really stunning. So I've been a lawyer for about 40 years now, and involved in almost every aspect and level of the legal profession, and so I can honor, except I've never been a general counsel anywhere, and I can honestly say that these issues that we're talking about today are more urgently in need of our attention and action than ever before. The lack of diversity and inclusion in our profession and in the justice system is really palpable. And so we want to also not just talk about it, but I think about what the barriers are, and importantly how implicit bias plays a role in why we have not been able to make more progress. So we've made some strides in diversity and inclusion, except the needle hasn't really moved in any appreciable way. And so, when we talk about that and the increasing numbers of women and lawyers of color who have entered the profession in recent decades, upward mobility is still a major issue. And it continues, it's something that's elusive and continues to be extremely difficult. So, while women, as has been said, constitute a third of the profession, only about a fifth of them are partners and law school deans, and only 3% of associates and less than 2% of partners are African American females. So while the numbers of female general counsels in Fortune 500 companies continues to increase, and obviously that is very good news, male general counsels still outnumber women by a ratio of 2 to 1. And a 2015 study by the Minority Corporate Counsel Association found that Fortune 500 companies lost a quarter of its black general counsel in the last year. No one would disagree, I hope, that increasing diversity and inclusion is important because it's the right and ethical thing to do as corporate citizens. And we know that. But we also know that it's extremely important from a business perspective. Because when we involve women and people of color in the LGBT community and people with various levels of disability, we're also being very pragmatic. I think that probably all of you know about the Catalyst study that looked at financial returns of companies with 3 or more women on their boards, and found that they outperform companies with all male boards by 84% on return on sales. And that another study by Catalyst found that the most racially diverse companies produce much better sales revenue, customer numbers, and profitability than those that are the least racially diverse. And we know that when companies become more diverse and inclusive, they're better able to solve problems and seize new opportunities. Teams of diverse thinkers, defined as those with different educational backgrounds, experiences, and racial or gender identities, have been better shown to be at better problem solving than teams solely for their intellectual ability. And you know what? I like to think about the fact that if you owned a baseball team and you had the best pitcher in the world, even though you had a lineup of the best pitchers, you would not want 9 pitchers on your baseball team. You would want somebody to be able to play every single position, because if you had only 9 positions, in other words, only the same type of people, you would lose every game. So I think we should think about that as we think about how we're going to increase diversity and inclusion. So democratic diversity and inclusion, we know, enhances creativity, just like you have a shortstop and a second baseman and a third baseman. And we need to be more innovative in our problem solving, and when we do that, we will enhance the results that we get. And I know that many of us have heard this over and over and over again, but I think it's really worth repeating because apparently, because of how slowly we've been moving, we don't quite understand about how these benefits apply to law firms as well as to others. And the fact that a recent study found that highly diverse law firms generate substantially greater revenue per lawyer and higher profits per partner, even after controlling for location, firm size, and hours worked. To do this, firms not only have to recruit diverse talent, but also retain and engage them and invite them to the management table. And as clients continue to demand, hopefully, diverse representation from their firms, the link between diversity and profitability may grow even stronger. Knowing this, we wonder why diversity and inclusion is so difficult to achieve. And as I mentioned before, I believe it has to do with, to a great degree, with implicit bias. And some, as you may know, have called implicit bias as a silent killer of diversity. And we all have some implicit biases. We can't escape them. But we have to understand we have to understand that we have them, we have to acknowledge it. So, because they affect our understanding, decision-making, and behavior, and without our even realizing it. In the legal profession, it means that diverse attorneys aren't getting a seat at the table. They aren't being offered a choice, they are not being offered the choice assignments, the networking opportunities, and opportunities to obtain critical leadership experience. And so, when we think about that, we think about how our biases may not be intentional, but avoiding negative behavior as a result of our unconscious bias requires us to be very intentional. We need to think about what it is we're doing, what is impacting our decision-making, and how we go about our daily lives. And we think about how stress and time constraints can cause our whatever unconscious or implicit biases to come into play. It's helpful for us to identify what our biases are, and we have to doubt our own objectivity from time to time, and as a necessary first step. Individuals can only work toward correction of biases once we acknowledge that they exist. And, sometimes things, we have to acknowledge them, and things sometimes don't feel uncomfortable with us, for us. And sometimes to get beyond that, we have to really walk to whatever is uncomfortable for us in order to overcome and get through that level of uncomfortableness. And so it's critically important from both a moral and legal imperative to understand what those biases are, not just as we go about our everyday lives, but in the context of law firms and in the context of corporations, but also the impact that it has on our entire legal system and on the justice system. So the American Bar Association has an important role in rebuilding the confidence and addressing the lack of diversity and inclusion in our profession. And one of the 4 goals, the American Bar Association has 4 goals, all of them to be treated equally. But the one goal, goal 3, is to promote full and equal participation in the association, our profession, and the justice system by all persons and eliminate bias in the legal profession and the justice system. And I have to tell you that we take that very seriously. Earlier, David talked about how excuses are made as to why we don't have more diversity and inclusion. We are a very results-orientated profession. And anytime we want to achieve a particular result, we want to increase our profitability, we want to increase our realization, we find a way to do it. And so if we want a particular result, we can get that particular result, and it applies to diversity and inclusion as well. So I felt that when I became president of the ABA last year, we created a Diversity and Inclusion 360 Commission. And I really drank the Kool-Aid where they told me that we have 400,000 members and I could leverage the power of the 400,000 members to do certain things. And so that is what I am trying to do. And so we created this Diversity and Inclusion 360 Commission, which has which is composed by a number of different people from different disciplines. We've got law school deans and chancellors and general counsels and regular people like me who are practitioners, chief diversity officers of their law firm, et cetera. And so They are, and we are examining the many facets of diversity, including racial, ethnic, gender, sexual orientation, and various level of abilities. The mission is to produce practical, useful tools and action items that can be implemented and move the needle on diversity and inclusion in a real way that makes an impact. So, for example, we have developed an ABA model diversity survey, which will allow general counsels to get uniform and consistent information regarding diversity in the legal profession. It's intended to be a good umbrella that allows for uniform comparisons, taking a big picture view of who's committed to diversity and who is not. Uniformity of data will allow for uniform measurement and comparison, better business decisions by clients and law firms, and reduction in the time, cost, and burden for legal professionals to respond to the myriad and voluminous requests for diversity data. The ABA model survey will be available at no cost, and its accompanying toolkit will provide guidance to corporate clients on how best to use the tool in making decisions about which law firms to retain and evaluating their performance and progress in the diversity and inclusion arena. The Commission has reached out to 11 organizations, among them the Corporate Council Women of Color, the Leadership Council on Legal Diversity, and the Minority Corporate Counsel Association to seek areas around which to collaborate and build consensus. The Commission is also focused on increasing the pipeline in the profession. And we believe that it's necessary to not just look at who's coming out of law school, but to look much further upstream to find out where our future leaders will be. And to do that, we are looking to address the barriers facing diverse students at critical points in the pipeline. So we are starting with kindergarten and looking at them. We're doing kindergarten through 12. We're looking at college and pre-law and law school to bar passage. As a part of this effort, we are creating a searchable database of pipeline programs across the country that all of us can go to and use to see which ones we can emulate and take to our particular organizations and jurisdictions. We're also exploring a military pipeline effort involving military service, JAGs, and are planning a video which senior military leaders discuss the practice of law with me, because the military is the most diverse organization in our country, and we believe that that could be a good source for pipeline for future lawyers. To address implicit bias in the justice system, our commission is working specifically on implicit bias, creating educational resources and other materials for judges, prosecutors, and public defenders about the existence of implicit bias and exploring what to do about it. In February, we unveiled what I unbiasedly call an excellent implicit bias training video. While the intended audience is judges, the themes are universal, and I encourage everyone here to watch, this is my commercial, watch the video on the ABA's website at ambar.org/360 commission. It's really very, very powerful video where we actually have not only experts on implicit bias, but also 3 judges who talk about their implicit biases. And it's been used in a number of places already. Later this year, we'll produce training videos for prosecutors and public defenders, and we hope to distribute all of the materials, including a companion toolkit and resources that reflect the latest research in this area nationwide. We've also asked a company if they could develop an app for us so that people who are interested in understanding more about the implicit biases and what they can do about them can go to this app to get more information. The Commission is also proposing changes to the ABA principles for juries and jury trials, a set of 19 principles that define our fundamental aspirations for the management of the jury system. The Commission is specifically seeking to revise the principle that courts should educate jurors on the essential aspects of a jury trial to include introduction on implicit bias. To increase the awareness of diversity and inclusion among lawyers, our House of Delegates passed a resolution at our mid-year meeting encouraging state and local bar associations and regulatory authorities that require CLEs to include programs on diversity and inclusion and eliminate bias. We are also bringing before the House of Delegates this summer a change to Model Rule 8.4 that will put into black letter law that lawyers cannot discriminate. We know, however, that working alone in this sphere is not possible. Many of you have devoted your lives and careers to issues of diversity and inclusion, and you are leaders in your field. We are seeking to partner always with outside organizations and entities to help us to further these goals and further move the needle and marshal as many resources as we can to make the strongest case for diversity and inclusion. So, as the name of this event, Diversity and Inclusion, a call to action, so aptly describes our situation today, I'm proud to say the ABA has heeded that call. In spite of all the peaks and valleys I have experienced in 40 years in the legal profession, I truly believe I'm a real half-full glass kind of person, that working together we can shape our corporate and institutional cultures to explore all that we have in common so that we can then fully embrace our differences to make a virtue out of them and to turn them into tools for creating prosperity and justice for all. I am so proud to be here in this room today with leaders who are so committed to fostering a culture that views diversity and inclusion as an important ideal to capitalize on, and to look and view your insights and skills and experiences so that we can maximize our cultural difference. That means that we will have, if we all work together, collaborate, share ideas, and make sure that we have a process for the implementation of them, we will generate a more equitable society in general and in our profession in particular. And we will have a legal system that is worthy of the Constitution upon which it rests. Thank you very much.